Some stars shine so brightly that it seems their light could never fade. Billy Squier was one of them, the man who made the entire 1980s move to the pulse of The Stroke, scream along to Lonely is the Night, and turned the guitar into the language of desire, fierce, yet deeply emotional. He had everything: talent, fame, millions of albums sold, and a place that once seemed irreplaceable in the history of hard rock. But then, in just 4 minutes, one misguided music video, everything collapsed. Fans turned their backs, MTV cut him off, and critics fell silent. From one of the brightest stars, Squier became the fastest forgotten man in rock. His downfall didn't come from addiction, scandal, or self-destruction, but from a seemingly harmless artistic decision that misrepresented his image and, with it, slammed the door on one of the most gifted rockers of his time. Billy Squier's story isn't just a tragic chapter about the cruelty of the entertainment industry. It's a testament to how a generation can destroy its own heroes over a single misunderstanding. His life traces a path from glory to loss, then to quiet rebirth, a beautiful tragedy, and a reminder that even those who once ruled the stage can be swallowed by it. Billy Squier was born on May 12, 1950, in Wellesley, Massachusetts, a quiet New England town where music came to him not as an act of rebellion, but as a natural breath of childhood. The only child in a middle-class family, he was enrolled by his parents in piano lessons at the age of 8. But young Billy had little interest in the rigid keys. He saw practice as an obligation, not a joy. It wasn't until he was 11, when he got his first guitar, bought from a friend for $90, that everything changed. The vibration of the strings beneath his fingers made him realize this was his true language. From that moment, Billy was immersed in the world of sound. He taught himself to play songs by Cream, the Blues Breakers, and especially Led Zeppelin, bands that would later become his invisible mentors, shaping his style and identity. At 14, he formed his first high school band, the Relevance, playing at small Boston parties. Though fame was far from his mind, Billy already knew one thing: he wanted to dedicate his life to music. The feeling of standing on stage and seeing people move to his guitar, even just a few dozen, planted a seed that would never die. After finishing high school, Billy enrolled at Berklee College of Music in Boston. At first, he intended to become a music teacher, but after just a few months, he realized he couldn't stand still in a classroom while music was raging outside. He dropped out, began playing in Boston clubs, and soon moved to New York, where the real rock dream began. There, he formed small bands, performed in smoke-filled bars, and learned to live the life of an artist. Little sleep, little money, but a firm belief that one day his sound would be heard everywhere. Billy Squier quickly became part of the rising rock scene in early 1970s New York, a time when countless young bands dreamed of becoming the next Led Zeppelin. With his explosive energy, thick vocals, and sharp guitar skills, Squier soon drew attention from the city's underground circuit. But for him, playing wasn't enough. He wanted to write, to create, and to own his sound completely. In 1975, after years of drifting between small projects, Billy decided to form his own band, Piper, where he was not only the guitarist, but also the lead singer and main songwriter. Piper's style captured the spirit of the era, powerful, passionate, and melody-driven, a fusion of hard rock and melodic pop that quickly attracted industry attention. Just a year later, they released their debut album, Piper, 1976, which Circus magazine hailed as the best debut album ever released by an American rock band. Exaggeration or not, the praise gave Squier the credibility he needed to step into the spotlight. In 1977, Piper released their second album, Can't Wait, maintaining strong form, but their momentum began to slow. Still, the band's growing reputation earned them a prestigious gig opening for Kiss, then the biggest rock band in the world, managed by Bill Aucoin. Piper even had the honor of performing at Madison Square Garden for 2 consecutive nights, an experience Squier later described as touching the sky. But the light didn't last. Internal tensions over musical direction and market pressure began to fracture the group, leading to Piper's breakup after just 2 albums. When the band ended, Billy Squier stood at a crossroads, continue drifting from project to project or strike out on his own. After years of collaboration, he realized that true freedom and true art required independence. So he signed with Capitol Records, marking the beginning of a new chapter, one that would transform him from a promising musician into one of the defining rockers of the early 1980s. In 1979, Billy Squier signed a contract with Capitol Records, marking the beginning of the solo journey he had long envisioned. Just a year later, he released his debut album, The Tale of the Tape, 1980, a record that, while not a commercial explosion, peaking modestly at number 169 on the Billboard 200, became the cornerstone of Squier's musical identity. Hard-edged melodies, driving rhythms, and blues-infused vocals. The album carried a raw, unpolished spirit. No technical gloss, no unnecessary embellishments, just the primal energy of electric guitars and a singer wrestling openly with his own emotions. Among its tracks, The Big Beat stood out like a manifesto. Bobby Chouinard's drums pounded like hammers, striking molten steel, while the opening guitar riff, sharp and hypnotic, grabbed listeners instantly. Although it never charted as a hit at the time, the song would outlive every other single he released. Over the next 3 decades, Run DMC, Jay-Z, Alicia Keys, Eminem, and dozens of hip-hop artists would sample The Big Beat, turning it into one of the most frequently used drum breaks in rap history. What began as a rock track recorded in 1980 became the rhythmic foundation for an entirely new generation of music. Proof that Billy Squier's influence stretched far beyond the borders of hard rock. Capitol Records quickly realized they had a rough diamond on their hands. Though The Tale of the Tape didn't explode in sales, critics praised its authenticity and Squier's songwriting skill. He was no longer the guitarist who once opened for Kiss. He was an independent artist on the verge of stardom. And just a year later, that moment arrived, with the release of his second album, Don't Say No, the record that would turn Billy Squier from a promising newcomer into one of the defining rock icons of the early 1980s. But no one could have predicted that only a few years later, a single music video would destroy everything he had built. In 1981, just 1 year after his modest solo debut, Billy Squier unleashed Don't Say No, and the rock world woke up. The album wasn't just successful, it was seismic, selling over 4 million copies and earning triple platinum certification. Don't Say No catapulted Squier from rising talent to one of the brightest stars in hard rock. From the first notes of The Stroke, listeners knew they were hearing something different, a hammering riff, hypnotic rhythm, and a gritty, seductive voice. It wasn't just a song, it was a declaration. Bold, rebellious, unapologetically confident. Yet Don't Say No was more than a single hit. It was a streak of infectious rock anthems that blended power with irresistible rhythm. In the Dark struck the perfect balance between pop melody and guitar-driven weight, flooding radio airwaves and making Squier a household name. My Kind of Lover revealed another side of him, a rocker who knew restraint, who could charm audiences with emotion rather than sheer volume. And then came "Lonely is the Night," the song that made critics admit what fans already felt. Billy Squier was the missing bridge between Led Zeppelin and the new MTV generation. With its blues-tinged groove and confessional vocals, strong yet solitary, the song spoke for an entire generation of musicians who lived for their art but felt adrift in the world they'd conquered. With MTV's arrival, "Don't Say No" became a global phenomenon. The image of Squier, sleeveless shirt, tousled hair, guitar blazing under bright stage lights, became the very face of early 80s rock energy. His videos played in constant rotation, making him not just a voice but one of MTV's first true visual icons. Billy didn't need to talk much. Every shrug, every flick of his guitar said it all. "This is my era." But behind the blinding lights and roaring crowds, another truth was quietly forming, a test that no album or tour could prepare him for. Because after every peak, there is only one certainty: the fall. And as Billy Squier stepped into the studio for his next record, no one, not even him, realized he was walking toward the most disastrous decision of his career. If "Don't Say No" was Squier's declaration of war on the world, then "Emotions in Motion," 1982, was his proclamation of power. The album didn't just extend his winning streak, it cemented him as one of America's most in-demand rockers. Upon release, "Emotions in Motion" exploded onto the charts, earning double platinum status and confirming Squier as a hit-making machine of the early 80s. But this time, he aimed higher. He wanted to turn rock into a true art form. At its core was "Everybody Wants You," a timeless rock anthem with every ingredient for mass appeal: tight drums, thick bass, crisp guitars, and a chorus that burst straight out of the radio. The song soared to #1 on the mainstream rock chart, holding the top spot for 6 consecutive weeks. It wasn't just Squier's biggest song, it was one of the defining rock tracks of the decade, a reflection of allure, temptation, and the loneliness of being desired, mirroring Squier's own life at that point. Dazzling under the lights, yet crushed by the weight of expectation. Beyond music, Squier made a bold artistic statement by inviting Andy Warhol, the ultimate symbol of pop art, to design the album cover. Warhol painted Squier in vivid, contrasting colors, transforming his face into a living artwork, a collision between rock and modern art captured in a single electrifying moment. The cover became an instant visual landmark, displayed and collected as part of the cultural intersection between music and pop art. 1982 also marked Squier's leap to the global stage. He joined Queen on their Hot Space tour, performing to massive crowds where Freddie Mercury and Billy Squier shared the same electrifying spotlight. Soon after, he launched his first solo headlining tour, this time with Def Leppard as the opening act, a clear sign that Squier was no longer the supporting player, but the artist younger bands looked up to. By 1983, Billy Squier had reached the pinnacle of fame. He was the embodiment of arena rock, music built for vast spaces, blinding lights, smoke cannons, and tens of thousands of raised fists. Yet while fans believed he was entering his golden age, Squier was unknowingly approaching the moment that would erase it all. Because just a year later, the very force that had made him a star, MTV, would turn on him and exact the highest price of his career. In 1984, Billy Squier returned with Signs of Life, continuing the wave of success he had built over the previous 3 years. Maintaining his signature high-energy hard rock sound infused with a touch of modern groove, the album quickly sold over 1 million copies, a remarkable achievement amid the fierce competition of the early 1980s. Songs like All Night Long and especially Rock Me Tonight marked a stylistic evolution. Brighter melodies, more pop-friendly rhythms, and a sound poised to reach a wider mainstream audience without sacrificing the powerful rock edge that had defined Squier's identity. Everything seemed ready for him to ascend to true superstardom, until the release of one fateful music video. Rock Me Tonight, the album's lead single, was supposed to extend his streak of triumphs. But when MTV aired the official video, fans were stunned. Under the direction of Kenny Ortega, Billy appeared in a pink tank top, dancing around a bedroom with soft, flowing gestures, rolling on the bed, twirling and strutting with exaggerated movements. In an era when rock culture was steeped in hypermasculine bad boy imagery, the visuals were a shock. The largely male hard rock audience reacted harshly, accusing him of having lost his rocker edge. Practically overnight, the once fiery symbol of masculinity became the butt of jokes across music magazines. MTV reduced airplay, radio stations pulled back support, and his label went silent, as if they no longer recognized him. The cruel irony was that Rock Me Tonight itself was a strong song, pounding rhythm, an addictive hook, and a guitar solo critics praised as one of Squier's finest performances. Yet, in a decade where image was everything, those 4 ill-fated minutes of video footage erased more than 10 years of hard-earned credibility. Feeling betrayed, Squier fired his management, cut ties with Ortega, and withdrew from the media. But the audience never came back. A man once cheered by millions was suddenly alone, undone not by scandal or excess, but by a single misunderstood performance. After Rock Me Tonight, everything shifted. His subsequent albums, though well-crafted, failed to resonate with listeners. Billy began to step away from the spotlight, carrying the bitterness of someone who had stood at the summit only to be swallowed by it. Yet what few realized was that even in silence, his legacy would endure, echoing in places no one expected. Following the painful fall from Rock Me Tonight, Billy Squier didn't vanish immediately. He fought to reclaim his career through the one thing that had always saved him: music. But in the image-driven world of 1980s rock, once the public turned its back, even the strongest songs seemed to fall on deaf ears. In 1986, he released Enough Is Enough, hoping for redemption. The album featured Freddie Mercury on backing vocals for Love Is the Hero, an electrifying track blending Queen's theatricality with classic Squier grit, radiant vocals, thick bass lines, and pounding drums. Yet despite the legendary collaboration, sales barely reached 300,000 copies, a modest figure compared to his glory days. The public, it seemed, wasn't ready to forgive. 3 years later came Here and Now, 1989, marking Squier's return to the style he did best: honest, emotional hard rock. The song Don't Say You Love Me carried a nostalgic pulse, balancing yearning with strength, and reached number 58 on the Billboard Hot 100, his last appearance on the charts. Though commercially modest, it proved his fire hadn't gone out. Still, the world was changing faster than he could adapt. When grunge erupted, the polished sound of arena rock became obsolete overnight. His 1991 album, Creatures of Habit, technically precise and full of effort, couldn't withstand the tidal wave of Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and Soundgarden. It sank quietly, like the final echo of a bygone era. By 1993, Billy Squier placed all his hopes on Tell the Truth, an album he considered his most honest and personal work. He poured his soul into every riff and harmony, collaborating with various musicians to create something pure and uncommercialized. But Capitol Records, the very label that had once lifted him to stardom, no longer believed. They offered little promotion, little support, and even less faith. The album sold just 37,000 copies, a heartbreaking number for a man who once sold millions. When his contract ended, Billy left Capitol, quietly, without ceremony, without farewell. A brilliant chapter had closed, and with it, the blinding lights of a decade that once belonged to him. But Billy Squier didn't fade into darkness, as many assumed. When the music fell silent, he began redefining what success meant, not through albums, tours, or fame, but through the life he chose to live afterward. When the doors of Capitol Records finally closed, many assumed Billy Squier's career had come to an end. But he didn't disappear. He simply withdrew into silence, seeking to rediscover himself after more than 2 decades defined by fame and missteps. In 1998, he quietly returned with Happy Blue, an acoustic blues project completely different from the explosive hard rock of his past. Gone were the screaming electric riffs and roaring crowds. In their place was a raw, intimate conversation between Squier and his guitar, raspy, earthy, and full of reflection. It wasn't the sound of a man chasing fame again, but of someone making peace with time. Though it didn't make commercial waves, Happy Blue was praised by critics as proof of his artistic rebirth, a portrait of maturity, where Squier finally found his truest voice after years of noise. From then on, he no longer played massive arenas. Instead, he chose small charity gigs, private concerts, and memorial events. Each time he picked up a guitar, audiences saw a different Billy Squier. No pyrotechnics, no flashing lights, just a seasoned voice and a gentle smile. To him, music was no longer a competition. It was a way of being. During these years, he also devoted much of his time to the Central Park Conservancy, volunteering as a groundskeeper for nearly 2 decades. On any given morning, you might spot Billy Squier, the former rock star who once sold millions of records, trimming hedges or gathering leaves in New York's Central Park. Quiet, grounded, and dignified. After years of solitude and silence, Billy eventually found a balance that neither fame nor music had been able to give him. Sometime in the late 1990s, at a music event in New York, he met Nicole Schoen, a former professional soccer player from Germany. Nicole wasn't dazzled by his fame or past glory. She was drawn to his calm honesty, while Billy found in her a sense of vitality and simplicity unclouded by judgment. They began talking, then walking together through Central Park, the same park where Billy often went to hear the real sound of the world. Their relationship grew slowly, deliberately, without the impulsiveness of youth. Through Nicole, Billy learned to live lighter, to stop chasing perfection or recognition. They married in 2002 in a small private ceremony with only close friends and family. No press, no paparazzi. It wasn't a celebrity wedding, but a quiet promise between 2 people who had already seen enough of life to know that real love lies in peace, not spectacle. Their marriage has remained steady and unpretentious, a reflection of the life Billy chose for his later years, humble, honest, and free from the need to prove anything. The couple divide their time between Bridgehampton, Long Island, where Billy tends the garden, writes music, and cares for their dogs, and Manhattan, living in the iconic San Remo building overlooking Central Park. Their days begin with morning coffee and often end with Billy playing an acoustic song just for the 2 of them. For more than 17 years, he has been a dedicated volunteer with the Central Park Conservancy, personally planting trees, maintaining over 20 acres of green space, and contributing to conservation efforts across Long Island. Nicole often joins him, not only as a wife but as a partner in purpose. Few people passing by would guess that the man crouched beneath the trees, trimming the grass, was once a rocker who sold millions of albums. But for Billy, that's precisely the point. Because, as he once said, nature never judges. Their life is free of scandal and of children, a choice they both agreed upon. Billy has hinted that he already has enough children, all in the form of songs, and Nicole seems to understand that better than anyone. Occasionally, differences arise between them. She's active and outdoorsy, while he prefers stillness and introspection. But rather than clashing, they balance each other. She draws him out into the world, and he teaches her the power of silence. That rhythm has kept their marriage strong for over 2 decades. Beyond environmental work, Billy also dedicates time to music education, often joining Nicole in supporting charities that help children access guitars and songwriting workshops. Much like he once found inspiration as a young boy. Though he remains far from the spotlight, his name resurfaced unexpectedly in 2013 when Eminem sampled The Stroke in his hit single Berserk. Once again, that 1981 riff roared into the 21st century, reintroducing Billy Squier to a new generation. Listeners who had never heard of him, yet now nodded along to his rhythm. Today, Billy rarely appears in public. He still plays music privately, sometimes with old friends, often alone, in quiet evenings with the same guitar that's been with him for over 50 years. Nicole usually sits nearby, smiling softly in the corner. When asked if he's ever thought of selling his guitars, Billy just grins. "I've never sold one of my guitars, so who knows?" Half a joke, half a vow, but also a quiet promise to himself that no matter how much the world changes, his guitar, his music, and the woman beside him will always remain. After years devoted to community work and quiet living, a small surprise arrived in early 2023 that sent ripples through the rock community. Billy Squier was back in the studio, recording with a full band for a new track. The song, blending classic rock with subtle electronic textures, was described as his first real breath after more than 2 decades of silence. It wasn't a major media event, but for longtime fans, it was proof that the fire in Billy Squier's heart had never gone out. Perhaps the real miracle wasn't how many times he'd stood on stage, but that, after all the loss and forgetfulness, he still had enough passion left to play a new note, simply because he still loved music the way he did in the beginning. In 2024, Squier quietly released a remix of Harder on a Woman, a track he had originally written and recorded in 2022, now reimagined with a modern sound blending classic rock and light electronic tones. The project was released quietly on streaming platforms and his official website without any major promotion or accompanying tour. For devoted fans, it was a sign that Squier was still engaged with the world of music, still creating, still inspired, even if free from the weight of commercial expectations. The remix received warm praise from longtime followers, many calling it an echo from the past, refreshed by the stillness of the present. Outside of music, 2024 also saw him continuing his volunteer work with the Central Park Conservancy and participating in several small environmental fundraisers across New York and Long Island. Every activity remained personal and low profile, consistent with the calm, measured life he has chosen for the past 20 years. By 2025, Billy Squier has no listed public appearances or tour plans. Major ticketing sites such as Songkick, Vivid Seats, and Bands in Town show no upcoming shows. However, sources within New York's artist circles reveal that he continues working in his private Manhattan studio, experimenting with acoustic and blues arrangements, perhaps building a small project, or simply keeping alive the joy of creation. At 75, he now lives between 2 worlds. By day, a gardener and conservationist. By night, a solitary artist with his acoustic guitar. Though he no longer performs on stage, Billy Squier endures as a symbol of silence after the spotlight. A man who once electrified the 1980s with his sound, yet now commands respect for the grace with which he stepped away from fame without losing himself. Perhaps for Billy, music never truly ends. It simply changes space, resonating now at a slower, deeper, and more truthful rhythm. From the final years of his retreat from the stage until now, Billy Squier seems to have chosen a different kind of life. Quiet, simple, yet never detached from music. And it is precisely in that silence that his legacy has begun to be re-examined and appreciated more fairly than ever before. Because when the cheers fade away, what remains is not fame, but the life force of music, something Billy never lost, even when the world turned its back on him time and again. His career stands as a beautiful paradox, an artist destroyed by image, yet redeemed by sound. Songs like The Stroke, Lonely is the Night, Everybody Wants You, and My Kind of Lover still echo regularly on radio stations, in films, and across classic rock playlists around the world. For fans of the 1980s, they are the echoes of youth. For new listeners, they are rhythms that feel both wild and grounded, the essence of pure, unfiltered rock. What's remarkable is how Billy's music has continued to thrive within hip-hop, a genre once thought to be its polar opposite. The big beat, from his debut album The Tale of the Tape, has become one of the most heavily sampled drum tracks in rap history, appearing in songs by Run DMC, Jay-Z, Alicia Keys, Big Daddy Kane, and Eminem. It was, in fact, Eminem who, by sampling The Stroke for his 2013 hit Berserk, unintentionally pulled Billy back into pop culture's bloodstream, prompting a new generation to discover the old guy who created that beat. Yet Billy Squier's greatest influence may lie in the cautionary lesson his story left behind for the music industry. The Rock Me Tonight incident was not just a personal tragedy. It was proof of the immense power and cruelty of image in the MTV era. It made later artists, from Bon Jovi and Def Leppard to Metallica, think twice about every frame, every marketing move. And even though he no longer stands on stage, Billy remains a reminder of the fragile boundary between art and industry, between creativity and perception. Today, Billy Squier is seen as a silent hero of American hard rock, a symbol of a generation of musicians who stayed true to their craft, untouched by the illusions of fame. His music continues to live on in classic rock playlists, in movie soundtracks, and in modern remixes by younger artists. Perhaps that is his greatest legacy, that music doesn't need to be loud to endure. It only needs to be honest to be remembered. Billy Squier doesn't need a grand comeback to remind the world who he once was, because his silence itself has become part of the legend. In an age where fame is inflated by the hour, he chose to step back and let the music speak for itself. From the electrifying riffs of The Stroke to the stripped-down warmth of Happy Blue, Squier's journey is living proof of something rare in the world of artists, that sometimes silence is the highest form of freedom. At 75, he has no need to reclaim his glory because it was never truly lost. It has simply changed form, living on in every classic playlist, every rap sample, and in the memories of those who still remember what it felt like the first time they heard his guitar. Billy Squier has left the stage, but he has never left music. If this story reminds you of another artist the world has forgotten, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe legends like Billy Squier deserve to be remembered, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can join us in rediscovering the immortal souls of music.